All right, we are back here on the podcast. NFL is past the halfway point, and it had a very interesting start to the season here. Join me today, great friend of the podcast, one of the senior NFL writers of The Athletic, writes the Pick Six column on Mondays, as well as the offseason QB tiers column. Mike Sando is back. Mike, welcome. How are you?
It's great to be here. Thanks. Well, I mean, we timed this up very well. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
It's not during the trade deadline day. We had 7 trades yesterday, but it's close enough that it's hot and we got a lot to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about here. And I think we obviously have to start with the big headline here, which is the Jets just deciding to just drop bombs on us left and right with these trades for Sauce Gardner's gone to the Colts, Quentin Williams, the Cowboys. They get a bunch of draft picks back here. They set themselves up here. Oh, we have a reset. How do you think the Jets did with these moves?
Well, I think they did well if they're committed to Aaron Glenn for the long term. I think that obviously this is going to take a while, and Glenn comes in and he decides, ideally, hey, who's the best fit for what we want to do? I thought it was a little odd that they signed Sauce Gardner to that deal when they did. They didn't have to do it. Sometimes I like it when the staff comes in and gets to make that evaluation. But I think I'm fine with it. I think Quinton Williams is a great player. I'm not sure that he's, the perfect fit for what they want to do. They're going to go Detroit style. They're probably going to get some bigger guys. So I love the fact that they, made decisions quickly, got good value in return. The test for them is just, do you have the patience now to go forward with what that means? The expectations now change. To me, this shows a longer runway for Aaron Glenn. But as we know, the Jets have aborted a lot of takeoffs over the years, right?
Yep, they
And
have.
so if they're willing to, remember Dan Campbell was 4-19-1,
Yeah.
and he had Jared Goff already.
Yeah.
He inherited a quarterback or they traded a quarterback who had gone to the Super Bowl. So, what would the Jets do to have Jared Goff right now, right?
Yeah.
It would be a totally different setup. So they still have a lot of work to do. They have more work to do than they had to do yesterday. But if they're willing to take the time and they have the right people, it can be okay.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way too. I think I've just said it a couple of different places here. I feel like what they did is you need to have the patience. Obviously, you need to nail the picks and find your quarterback. But like with all these first round picks, making the bets that, Daniel Jones turns into a pumpkin or the Cowboys can't figure it out here. And look at the caps they had. They're almost 94 million this year, over 200 million for 27 here. Like this is as blanket canvas you have in the league, and they can really turn it around quickly if they do make the right choices.
I don't know how quickly. I mean, how quickly do you turn it around when you don't have a quarterback?
I
You
said
know,
that I think they have the ability to get whichever one they want at some point in the draft process.
That's no doubt. But most people feel, and we'll see, they could be wrong, that 26 is not a good year for the draft
Yeah.
for quarterbacks and the draft overall. So they also have the capital to get a veteran too. And
Yes.
we'll see. We've seen it's been interesting the last couple of years with the Sam Darnolds and the Baker Mayfields, and even Jared Goff, who had been a really productive guy with the Rams, sort of fell out of favor there, and then has had a great second run with Detroit. So, does that appeal to a defensive-minded head coach, right? Get a veteran guy in there. You want that person to be able to run the offense, but also project the sort of the ethos of your building, right? I mean, look what Baker Mayfield has done for Tampa Bay in terms of the way he plays. People rally around him, that sort of a thing. You could go that route as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of options for them as well. I want to go to the Giants too here, and obviously they did not make any landscape shaking moves at the deadline here. I think they have their guy with Jackson Dart, but right now is a question here with this regime with Brian Dable, Joe Shane. We've seen questions I know from some of your colleagues at the Athletic about the effort level in the locker room with the Giants. Some of these guys and these voices coming out of here, like, what do you think we're looking at with them the rest of the way here?
Well, I don't think they could really be sellers with the people trying to save their jobs. And also, they don't want to. I mean, shoot, they've already lost enough players on offense. Malik Neighbors is out. They lost their rookie running back. Defensively, I think that is, you know, at the end of the day, Dayball is going to be evaluated for his record, of course, but I think, the handling of his staff, the fact that Wink Martindale didn't work out, the defense now looks like it's, a little bit of a free fall. And I think that could really hurt Dayball because if they have the right quarterback, they don't need Dayball to make him good, right? I always feel like the best way to become a good quarterback coach is to get a good quarterback, right? That's an
Yeah.
old saying in the league, that coaches used to say. I think Ernie Zampese way back in the day used to say that, and so it's true. They don't have to keep Dayball just because Dart looks good or that Dayball liked him. And I think how that defense, the locker room, all that stuff is going to go into the calculus. The other part of it, though, for the Giants is, their owner, John Mara, is battling cancer. So it's a heavy lift for an owner when if you're going to get rid of the GM, get rid of the coach, and start anew. That's a tough thing to do. Even though a year ago, Mara said, "Hey, if I'm back here in January and you're asking these same questions, we got a problem." Just things change. So I think they're in a kind of a bit of a weird spot here where they, feel good about some things, but the overall record isn't good. And if that's happening on defense, there's a little bit of a mutiny. That reflects on the head coach.
Yeah, it certainly does here. And obviously, the whole thing with them right now, the rest of the year, is seeing what they have with Jackson Dart. And he's shown you flashes that he can be a good quarterback in the league. He brings energy, which you love. The thing I watch with Jackson Dart is I'm curious how he does down the backstretch here, like where he goes as a passer, because I feel like he's a guy that like he runs so much that like he's exposing himself to unnecessary hits and could hurt himself and miss time he could use to develop here. Like in terms of like, I know you're the big QB tier guy. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
talked to people yet about how they feel about Dart, but like, is there sort of sentiments about how people around the league feel about him?
I think he's, I would think that there's been enough from him this year if he plays the rest of the year that he might come in low tier three, which is good. That's not a bad place to start. A lot of times guys start in tier four. Hey, don't have enough information, but I think he's shown enough. Now, I'm with you on the amount of hits he takes. I have a stat that I maintain that just looks at, hey, what percentage of your plays that are not handoffs are kind of risky? What percent are either a designed rush, a scramble, a sack, a quarterback hit when you didn't get sacked, those types of things. And he's very high. He's been 30% of his non-handoffs are like that. That's very high. I mean, Justin Fields is up there. There's a couple other running quarterbacks up there, but I think, Lamar Jackson's up there, but Lamar slips the punches.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamar is just like a professional runner. He knows, like Marcus Allen was like that as a running back. He could take the ball at the goal line and slither through there and not get hit. Jackson Dart is more like Rocky Balboa to me. He's just going to take some shots, and you've got to learn how to play. We saw Jaden Daniels the other night. Dan Quinn's taking a ton of heat, but as a quarterback, you've got to know the situations too. There's a reason these guys who know how to play don't get hurt.
Yeah.
That includes Lamar,
Yeah.
who, if you look at the video over the years, he's taken too many hits. Maybe it'll affect him later in his career, but he kind of knows how to do it. Jackson Dart needs to learn that, or we're going to see Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston again this year. Imagine if Dart gets hurt in week 14 and misses the rest of the year, then what?
Yeah. Not pretty for Giant fans to try and watch that at that point. But I think one of the things I also been interested about this year is like I feel like I said this a couple of occasions here. I feel like this year is very easy to find out who the bad teams are, but I don't know who the good teams are, who the best teams are. So like from what you observe here, who would you say actually are the best teams in the league? I feel like it changes on a weekly basis.
Yeah, no, well, I would be putting Kansas City with an exclamation point if they
Yeah.
hadn't been down 28-13 to Buffalo and
Yeah.
lost by a touchdown. But I still feel that way. I still feel they're good. I feel like I feel like they're going to be one of the teams there at the end. I still think Buffalo's going to be one of those teams there at the end. Probably Philadelphia. There's always noise around there, but I think that they're going to be solid. I think of the teams that haven't been to Super Bowls or championship games lately. I think that Seattle's a team to watch now. The Rams are good from that division. We've wondered if Stafford could stay healthy. I like those two teams. We'll see about Green Bay. They can be, but I think the Tucker Craft injury hurts them. There's something a little off there with them. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's just because they lost to Carolina, but those are a few of the teams. I think Indy is an interesting matchup. Like I thought Indy's run game could be a problem for a Buffalo type defense. We'll see. They got solved a little bit last week, but I think those are some of the teams.
Yeah. In terms of storylines down the stretch here, like what are you tracking over the last 9 weeks of the regular season? Like what's something that you're saying, okay, I could see maybe this division or this player, like what intrigues you in terms of storyline wise?
Well, definitely Seattle down the stretch with Sam Darnold. I mean, we've seen these guys, revive other places, and I think he's playing really like almost tier one type throws. I think he's playing great. So, how far do they go? I think they were a 10-7 team that traded their quarterback, traded DK Metcalf. I think a lot of people nationally were just kind of like, oh, it's a little bit of a reset year. They look tough. I think they got a top 10 defense, they got a top 10 offense. Special teams have been among the best in the league. So I think it's definitely a team I want to see what they're going to do. Green Bay intrigues me because I think there's a lot of expectations. A lot of people anointed their roster, and they have a good record, but
Yeah.
they've lost to Cleveland and Carolina. There's just something a little off. So I think they're an interesting team. To me, Minnesota, what happens with JJ McCarthy? They gave up on Darnold. Not gave up, but they decided to go with McCarthy. So I think that's a very interesting team to me. Houston. They won playoff games each of the last 2 years, but what are they, right? I think they're pretty good, but what are they? I think those are some of the teams.
Yeah, definitely some teams I think they're interesting here. I think the Green Bay thing's also fascinating because like my theory of Green Bay has always been they sort of play the level of their competition, which is why you see them play the Steelers. They look like a world beater, and then I don't know why they still just can't get up for some of these like lower level teams. They kind of just coast a little bit, and ends up biting them in the butt at the end of the game.
Yeah, they have a very young team. That could be part of it. I also think, there's different coaching philosophies. And I'm not saying anything about Matt LaFleur's, but, some people are more get you fired up for this game, and some people are more let's just have a standard that we play with every week. And Pete Carroll was always with Seattle, he was always like, we don't care who we're playing, we're going to play at a certain level. And sometimes that would hurt you, like you wouldn't seem as up for the big game, right? Because you're trying to play the same way every week. I think Green Bay is still finding its way with that. They always have one of the youngest rosters in the league, and I think Jordan Love is good. I think everybody would like to have him, but maybe in his evolution here as a leader, maybe that takes a little time.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go surprise teams here. Obviously, the obvious ones, you got the Colts and the Patriots leading the division. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody had that going into week one. Carolina being over 500 this late in the season is a bit of a surprise. The Bears 5-3 in that division is intriguing. Like, what's caught your eye in terms
Yeah.
of big surprise this year?
To me, Carolina and Chicago are less of surprises to me. I mean, their records are just okay. They've had a couple surprise games, but they've also lost, some games that they probably should have won. So
Yeah.
to me, they're just sort of a little hit and miss. The other team, India, New England, like New England is definitely a lot better than I thought. Like to me, I thought New England could be a bottom four team in the AFC.
Yeah.
So that's gone way faster than I thought it would. I didn't think the supporting cast around Drake May would be, good enough, but Drake May has stepped up. I think Drake May is looking like he's going to possibly be a tier two quarterback. He could debut in tier two,
Yeah.
which is rare. That's Justin Herbert's done that. Jaden Daniels did. We'll see where he is now next year. So I think they have been the biggest surprise to me. And so the combination of kind of Vrabel's mentality, identity for the team with a good quarterback. And I think a good quarterback who takes good coaching, hard coaching, detailed coaching from Josh McDaniels has been a better mix than I thought. I think they're going to be in the mix. I think they're a good team. Indy, uh, I don't think that Daniel Jones has been amazing. He's got great stats, especially, the team offense does. But I think it shows you when you have incompetent quarterback play and it's just competent. I think Daniel Jones can handle a lot of the things Shane Steichen wants to do. Um, but I still don't know about Daniel Jones or them when if they're up against a good team and have to they're behind and have to throw that sort of a thing. I think they have a formula that works. Just not sure how far it's going to drive them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the thing with Daniel Jones is I feel like obviously getting out of New York, I think a lot of people say, oh, like, lesser market, like maybe better supporting cast, he's better here. You wonder if the Colts, it was based on, and again, this is based on one game against Pittsburgh, which is kind of a small sample size, but you wonder here, like, are you about to walk in the same trap the Giants did and just like give him a lot of money and then have him regress the next
Yeah,
year?
I don't think so. I think the roster in Indy's better. I think Steichen does a good job, and temperament wise, I like Steichen. And then I think the key for them will be not to go over the top with the
Yeah.
contract. I think we've seen a couple of these guys who've had little revivals. you know, like Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, who didn't go right away to the top five contracts, right? They end up doing a 3-year deal. The team can have some flexibility, prove it a little bit. The quarterbacks realize they're in a good spot. This is good for their career. I think Daniel Jones being in Indy is a big win, but how many other teams are going to pay Daniel Jones, a Josh Allen contract, right? Nobody's going to do that. So I would think there that reasonable heads prevail. They're able to get a deal that, anoints him as a starter next year, but also, gives them an out in a year or two that you wouldn't get doing a Dak Prescott style deal.
Yeah, I would think that makes some sense here. Let's go the other way in terms of disappointments here. Obviously, I mean, apart from like the teams we knew were going to be bad, I think you're looking kind of in that Miami, the Bengals after the Burrow injury, Houston, Dallas, Washington. That's sort of bucket of disappointment. It's like, who do you feel like is the most disappointing team to you so far?
Well, I think Washington for sure is because I think their trajectory now calls into question just kind of how they've built the team with some older veterans. It'd be very interesting to me to see what they do in the offseason. Now they're not going to have Jaden Daniels. Record's probably not going to be that great. Do they go a little bit younger on the defensive side of the ball in particular? I think that sort of they may need a pivot a little bit here. And they didn't do long-term bad deals with their older guys, but I think it may be time to reassess and an opportunity to do so because the record's not going to be good. Miami to me was always a team that had sort of peaked in their window of paying and who they had. So I thought this could be a down year for them. They're committed to Tua Tagovailoa in a way that didn't make any sense at the time when they did the deal. So to me that they're just weird because they fired the GM in season or Chris Greer agrees to leave. Usually you'd change the coach. I just not sure what they're doing. Probably going to be a bit of a reset there.
Yeah. Like, so in terms of Dallas, I just want to touch on like sort of Jerry's decision-making process this year. 'Cause I feel like obviously like they have a great offense, but the whole process of we're trading Micah Parsons in the conference. We don't want to pay him. We got back 2 picks, then we trade a bunch of picks for Quentin Williams, who is a good player, but he's 28, has only 1 sack, and a new contract. And I think the thing I think is underrated reporting deal is that the fact that they have this Jets got this clause in there that they can get the better of the 2 picks, basically puts those in escrow. And the Cowboys can't use them to really do anything unless they go back to the Jets and get the condition change. Like it makes you wonder like what the exact thought process is for Jerry. I don't think I understand what the ideas of the defense.
Well, it tells me there was probably competition for Quentin Williams out
Yeah.
there, and so they had to do things that maybe another team wasn't willing to do. And I think they would be in a desperate situation with how bad their defense is. And I think when you go into a year, they hire Matt Eberflus, you take away his best pass rusher, you got to get him something.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing with Micah Parsons, some of it became personal with Jerry and didn't like the way that Micah was pushing back. But I think it also signaled that they liked Micah Parsons but didn't love everything about him. And I
Yeah.
think that they didn't want to give him that big of a deal, which really anoints you in your organization as, hey, everybody, look at how this guy goes about his business, right? Because we can argue that Dak Prescott doesn't deserve that or CeeDee Lamb or whatever, but those guys in the way they go about their jobs is what you want,
Yeah.
okay? And Micah Parsons has always had a little bit of the perception. Remember, there was some questions about him coming out in the draft, and I think while he's a super productive player, you know, he's kind of doing his own thing a little bit. He's got his podcast going, all these different things, right? Don't you get that feeling? And I think they stopped short of holding him up to the rest of the team. They would rather have those resources available to other guys, but you got to spend them on somebody. You got to get something. And so Quinton Williams probably uh, somebody that's going to be there the next 3 years, and is going to be, maybe the best player in their defense.
Yeah, for sure. Two more questions before I let you go. Number one here, we have obviously had a coach fired in season already. The Titans moving on from Brian Callahan. We've been wondering about Mike McDaniel's job security, Dable with the Giants. Like, who else think is really coaching for their jobs down the stretch here?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if those teams are going to do it in season. I'd probably have to look at the standings to even think who's down there. Obviously, New Orleans isn't going to do anything. I think they're committed to their guy. I don't see. Is there another one that could go? I don't know about during in the season.
I mean, like who? I meant the question more is like who needs to have a good second half to save their job going forward.
Yeah, that's a good. And we're recording this, so I'll
Yeah.
let me just pull it up, and you can cut it up. I just want to look at the
Another one I was
standings
watching
here.
is Arizona too because of the whole Jonathan Gannon fiasco.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I agree. I think Arizona is very interesting with the coaching situation because I believe it's staff driven to kind of stick with Jacoby Brissett. All
Yeah.
right. Now, that's fine. But I think to earn the chance to pick the next quarterback, it can't just totally fall apart.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if they're interesting because I think they're getting some guys back on defense, their first round pick, defensive lineman. Um, and if they can get the defense kind of going, and the offense has always been pretty good. I think the offense has been underrated there.
Yeah.
I think they've done a decent job with it. There's just inconsistency that comes with Kyler Murray, the way he plays. So they're going to have a better record second half of the year. They lost five in a row, but they were all like, wait a minute. It was by a very small margin, most of those games. So it's going to even out for them. I think they're going to win some games down the stretch and then probably get this GM and coach. I think they have a good chance to be able to pick the quarterback, but it can't fall apart. They can't just keep losing these games. And so I think beating Dallas was a good step for them. I mean, a couple of the other teams, I mean, Miami, I think for sure, you would think that Mike McDaniel would be in play. The problem for them is they're committed to Tua, and Tua's only played well for him. So, maybe that buys him a little bit of security. Cleveland's interesting to me. You never know what they're going to do. I've always wondered if Kevin Stefanski would even want to be there long term with the way things sort of happened there. But they extended him, they extended the GM before last season, so maybe those guys wind up making it.
Yeah, I think two more I'm watching personally are Cincinnati because of how it's fallen apart again without
Yeah.
Burrow and Atlanta because I feel like they're constantly underachieving with the talent base they have.
Atlanta's just so up and down. To
Yeah.
me, Atlanta doesn't have any consistency, and it seems like, I was very supportive of the Raheem Morris hire. I felt like he was one of those classic second chance guys. He got the job too young in Tampa.
Yeah.
He'd probably admit that. Made some mistakes, but really had shown himself wherever he had been since then to be pretty good. I like the fact that he'd gotten some experience with Kyle Shannon on the offensive side of the ball and Matt Ryan's MVP year in that area, and then he just projects himself so well. But they have been up and down, and you do sometimes follow the personality of your coach. Is Raheem Morris a little bit too excited when they win, a little bit too down when they lose? There's something wrong there. And so I think he's got to prove himself and just sort of the steadiness of the team, the consistency of the team. And it just hasn't been there.
Yeah, my last question is obviously, I feel like every year there's always that one team we're sitting here at the midway point. They're kind of, hanging around 500. They had some injuries early. They don't really get going for a bit. And then all of a sudden, you look up in January, they're playing the second round of the playoffs here. It's like, is there a team you feel like that fits this mold? I feel like the obvious call would be the Ravens if like Lamar is able to stay healthy.
I think that's completely true. I think they've got their tight ends back. They've got their fullback back, and they should be a top five offense the rest of the way. Now, Lamar was able to play coming off the hamstring. I didn't think he looked totally diminished or anything. So I have a little bit of optimism for them on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they've been able to pull it together. Obviously, they moved Kyle Hamilton around and things seem to get better, but I don't know. That's a place where I could see change, certainly on that side of the ball, this coming off season. But the question there is just what happens if Harbaugh, if they just miss the playoffs or if they get there and lose in the first round, it will have been 12, 13 years since they've been to a Super Bowl. You know, where does everyone feel like they're at that point?
Yeah. So interesting to see for sure. Mike, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow your coverage of the Athletic and follow you on socials, how they do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Athletic, we got a great app. You can obviously find us at theathletic.com. You can find me on X at Sando NFL. And, you know, appearing on podcasts like this and doing a lot of radio and that type of stuff too.